It is such a beautiful view.
Do you live up here?
What's up, guys? Welcome back to Pat Outdoors. Today we're going to be taking out my Rawrr Mantis X. This is Rawr's mid-size e-moto. It's a 72 volt bike, which means it makes a pretty good amount of power. I've been riding this bike for a little over a month now, mostly on city roads, and I actually took it out on an ATV trail, which was completely flooded out. That was so much fun. But we're actually going to take it out on some slightly different conditions today. We're just going to go around here in my neighborhood in West Virginia, blast through some gravel trails. Then we're going to take it into the woods so I can show you guys how it handles in some off-road conditions. I also want to go over all the things that I love about this bike and a couple of the things that I don't particularly enjoy about it. All right, starting the day off with 80% battery. I'm going to be cruising around on sport mode. I know they just poured some fresh gravel in the neighborhood, so the surface is a little bit loose, a little bit sketch. Let's pull over here to the side and I'm going to talk about what I really like about this bike so far. All right, Pat, do not drop this thing down the hill. So let's start off with the things that I really like about this bike, starting with its looks. I really think that this is a very attractive looking bike. I know the frame design is a little bit controversial, but it's definitely grown on me this past month. The second thing I really like about this bike is the suspension. I think it rides very plush. It's very similar to how my Sur-Ron rode. Definitely a lot more comfortable to ride off-road. It's got the KKE suspension, which feels a lot heavier duty than the D&M suspension on my XXX. KKE front and rear. I did have to make an adjustment on the hardware to make sure that it is not bound up too tight for the rear. Third thing I really like about this bike is the wheel set. It's got a 19-inch front wheel and a 17-inch rear. So it's offset like a traditional dirt bike. The larger front wheel makes it a little bit easier for the bike to go over obstacles in off-road conditions. The stock tires are pretty grippy in the dirt, though traction is a little bit limited on wet pavement. I'm probably going to upgrade the tires at some point, but I just want to put more miles on these ones and wear it down a little bit more before we consider spending any more money on this bike.
Nice view, huh?
It is such a beautiful view. Oh, yes, sir. Kind of like an electric mountain bike, but kind of close to a dirt bike, I guess.
Yeah, but lightweight.
Yeah, it's only 139 pounds.
Yeah, all right, I'll have fun.
All right, thank you, sir. Take care. Another thing I really like about this bike is the seat. I think it's very comfortable. It's nice and wide, and it's got plenty of surface area for you to sit on. It also looks like a traditional dirt bike, not like the bigger Rawrr Mantis, which has that weird dip. I can definitely sit on this seat for hours. I can probably do a 30-mile ride without hurting my ass. It's got this nice display that shows you just what you need to see, such as battery life, speed, and what mode you're in, along with how many miles you have on the odometer. It's currently set on the trip. It has a high beam and a low beam and a horn. Sounds exactly what you expect an e-motor to sound like. The brakes are pretty decent, though I might be swapping out the pads in the near future. But of course, my favorite thing about this bike is the power. This bike gets up to 50 miles an hour pretty quickly, and it's able to maintain it there even on a slight uphill. But obviously this is some freshly poured gravel, so we're not going to be doing that today. You can check out my other videos if you want to see some speed testing. But besides the power, what I really like is the power delivery. The controller and the throttle are tuned very well, so you can easily modulate the throttle in case you're going over like a rock garden or something. Even in sport mode, it's really not intimidating. That's why I actually barely use eco mode, because I think it's kind of pointless since I could just modulate it with my throttle like a traditional dirt bike. I think this bike is insanely capable considering it's only $3,000. I know you can probably list off a bunch of bikes that are more capable than this, such as the E-Ride Pro SS, Talaria's new MX-5 Pro, even the Talaria MX-4 Sting R. We all know those are technically better bikes, but you got to keep in mind that that's a completely different price range, so it's a different class of e-motos. I think the Mantis X should be compared more to other bikes in its price range, such as the Sur-Ron Lightbeat S or the Talaria Triple X, or even the E-Ride Pro S with a 17-inch wheel set. I was actually considering the Lightbeat S, the smaller one, a couple months ago, but I'm so glad that this bike came out and I ended up going with this. And it's only $200 more, but it comes with so much more power, such better suspension. It's not like a regular mountain bike fork like on the smaller Sur-Ron, and it's got a 1917 wheel set. Almost missed our driveway there. I really got to install some gates. I'm going to take you through some of the single track trails that we've been clearing so far, and then we're going to talk about the things that I don't particularly enjoy about this bike. It's going to be taking a quick beer break, and then we're going to go around and explore the property. Just want to give you guys a heads up. This trail is far from being fully cleared. It's a little sketch to ride on. We just started cutting down some trees and raking a couple months ago, but a lot of it is not perfectly level. It's actually off to the side of a mountain, so I still got to rent a mini excavator or a mini skid steer to perfectly level things out, so it'll be an official single track. I want at least a 1 mile loop here at our lot. I think that'll be plenty of fun, and I want it to have some cambered turns and make sure that it is even pit bike safe, since I like to ride smaller bikes like my Razors. Well, before we get started, let's just go over the first thing I don't particularly like about this bike, and that's the fact that we are already down to 60% battery. Granted, we didn't start with 100% battery today. We started at about 80%, and we've only gone riding for a couple miles today, but I was in sport mode the whole time, and we did some really long hill climbs today, which typically sucks up a lot of battery power from any electric bike that you decide to go with. I used 20% of battery riding yesterday, which I think I only put like 6 miles on it. That is about the same as what majority of the people that have been reviewing these bikes have been getting. About 25 miles if you're riding it hard the whole time, or about 35 miles if you're just cruising around on sport mode. I feel like that's a common complaint that people always comment on my videos about this bike, is how much the battery life kind of sucks and how you only get 25-30 miles per charge. But have you guys actually been riding over 30 miles a day? I know a couple of you guys have. I've done 50 miles in one ride before in my Talaria, along with my Razors, because I was doing some range tests, but it actually is pretty exhausting to go over 25-30 miles on an e-moto on any single day. So I don't really know how often you're going to run into a battery life issue. Holy shit, this is so freaking steep. Oh. I've definitely got some leveling to do. I've definitely got some clearing to do, and I definitely have a lot of leveling to do. I'm actually gonna measure how much of a loop we already have. I was estimating it to be about half a mile. All right, let's reset this trip so we can get an idea how much of a trail we've cleared out so far. You guys have no idea how steep this is. This is freaking gnarly steep. Let's see how far that was. 0.43 miles. So we've definitely got some work to do. I do have a lot more space, but that's probably only 4 out of 21 acres that we have here. But the rest of it will definitely take earth moving equipment to clear out. So you can see I've got plenty of trees to clear, and I've got a lot of land leveling to do. We actually have an old fire road on the bottom side of the property that stretches out a little over 500 feet, and it's almost a perfectly straight line. So I can't wait to get that cleaned up and get a path to go over there so I can show you guys. That's probably going to be like the fast straightaway at our property. Okay, so we're down to 56% battery. So we did that loop twice and rode a little bit more. So it used up 4% in about 1 mile of off-road riding. So as long as you're not fully on it on race mode, long heavy pulls the whole time, you're not really going to suck up battery like that if you're just riding in some wooded trails. It's mostly if you're on the road and you're just trying to hammer it going 50 the whole time, you will definitely lose your battery life in maybe 25 miles. But it definitely would be nice to have more space for a larger battery. This one is enclosed in the frame and under the seat, so we are limited on how much battery we can stick in here, which is one of the downsides of this bike, at least for me. Like my Talaria XXX, I have a eWatt 74 volt 44 amp hour battery, which is huge, and I get over 60 miles of range on that thing on one charge, and a lot of that is going like 45, 50, which is so impressive, but I don't think that this frame has the space for that kind of battery. The second thing that I don't really like about this bike is the power loss when you go below 60% battery. So right now we're sitting at an angle, we're going uphill, and we're on eco mode, and I'm just going to go full throttle. This is full throttle, guys, and I'm not going anywhere. So let's switch that back to sport, and I'm only going partial throttle right now, but that's kind of why I think eco is kind of pointless. But there is a noticeable amount of power loss once we fall below 60% battery. Like, I have no doubt this bike will still hit 50 right now, but at 55%, it just feels like it lost maybe 20% of the power. But it's definitely still got plenty of power to do dumb stuff with. Another thing that I don't particularly like about this bike is how the graphics are already peeling around the edges. I'm not really a big fan of the lime green all over the frame anyways, but this is actually just from one time going off-road at that flooded ATV trail, and it's starting to lift over here as well, so I'm just going to take all that stuff off anyway. Another not so good thing about this bike, which doesn't really bother me personally, but it gets commented on my videos pretty often, is it's only $3,000 because it doesn't have regen. Regen would be pretty nice to have, so I can have a little bit of braking when I'm throttling off, and it could also help with the battery life, but it is certainly not a deal breaker for me at this price range. The fifth thing I don't like about this bike is the fact that it doesn't have a taillight, though that's also not a deal breaker for me since I use this mostly as a trail bike. Luckily, I happen to have a Rawrr XXX that I use for riding around the city, running errands, and riding with people, and that has a brake lamp, so it hasn't really bothered me too much. But if this was my only bike, I would probably be installing a brake lamp on this ASAP. And I was also curious about these turn signal lights. You see when you key on, you'll kind of see it. Are they selling a kit that makes it easy for us to install a brake light and turn signals? If so, that would be pretty awesome, and I would probably be installing one on this bike. But besides that, I've been very, very happy with this bike so far. Holy shit, I definitely got to cut down some of these stumps that are still sticking out. Just to sum things up, this is a great freaking bike, and it puts up quite a fight against all the competition in the $3,000 price range. Is it perfect? No, there's definitely some shortcomings, one being the battery life, but Rawrr is offering a 35 amp hour 72 volt battery pack as an option for you guys who are looking for slightly more ride time. I'm considering that myself, but I'm still waiting to see what the BMS specs are on that, since we know that the stock battery puts out 90 amps continuous, which is perfectly matched to the stock controller. I've been looking into getting a controller upgrade for this bike, but as of right now, I don't really see a reason for an upgrade since the stock controller manages the power pretty well, except for in eco mode. I was hoping Nuclear was able to do some sort of P24F adapter for me. I would definitely go with that controller if they had a bolt-on option, but like I said, this battery is not really going to put out any more power than it already does. So if you happen to know any details on the 35 amp hour Rawrr is offering, and if that is able to put out any more power, please comment below. I'd be very interested to know more about it. But other than that, this bike is very fast and it handles very well on and off-road, even on some gravel and some really gnarly off-road terrain. I'm sure it's very hard to see on camera, but we went through some really steep rock gardens earlier, which I definitely wouldn't consider doing in my Rawrr XXX, even with my Shinko 241s on that bike. But if you enjoyed today's video or found it helpful in any way, do me a favor and hit that like button. And if you like this kind of content, want to keep up with some of my projects, some of my bike reviews, or this Rawrr Mantis X, make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit that bell notification. But this is going to be it for today. Thank you for watching.